been really nice putting together a presentation for this session. I'm going to just set my little timer so I don't overrun or whiz through too quickly. First of all, just to introduce myself, I'm Casey. I consider myself to be a creative. I'm also a mother. This is my little boy, Lion. And also, as Faye said, I'm a happiness consultant. Now, there are obviously many facets to who I am, just as there are with yourself. But the reason I was highlighting these elements is to give some context for today and why I've been invited here, but also because they bring meaning to my life. I believe I'm the best person, the best version of myself, and therefore the happiest I can be when I'm engaging authentically in these acts. So when I lose myself in the moment, in experience, the emotion of the subject, I'm really, really amplifying my happiness. It's not always the case. Obviously, each one of these challenges me in different ways, but that challenge is ultimately often what brings the reward, which we'll come on to later. So I'm going to introduce you today to some really broad concepts within psychology that relate to happiness, and in particular, how these theories and practices can be applied positively to your life. So I'm going to give you some practical suggestions. I think a lot of these will be familiar and perhaps you won't even realize you're doing them. But yeah, just to give you a bit of context. So this is a quote from Martin Seligman, and he is considered the father of modern positive psychology. He actually founded the positive psychology movement, and the context of that is strongly linked to happiness. He has been incredibly influenced and informed by all the thinking that's happened since the beginning of time, really. As I mentioned, we're going to look at some of that thinking. So I'm going to take you through the history, theories, how we can amplify our own happiness, and then we'll do a couple of practical sessions, 2 or 3, depending on the time, that can help unlock your flow, which is linked to creativity. So some of the happiness major thinkers throughout history. You'll notice, as I did when I was pulling this presentation together, they're all men. I definitely need to work harder on finding some women to drop into this presentation, because I'm sure they exist. But yeah, so excuse the fact that they are all men. Now I've mentioned Seligman, but of course, sorry, it's my dog in the background. But of course, happiness didn't start with him. I'm going to go through some of these people now. First of all, we've got Buddha. So Buddha believed in finding fulfillment within the experience of living. There is no end goal, the path is the goal. So very much about living in the moment, which is a very current trend at the moment within psychology, within well-being. Aristotle, he thought that happiness is something we create within us. Again, that's going to be a really familiar concept for us, for those of us interested in well-being. This gentleman, Lao Tzu, I'm going to just read a quote attributed to him, and please take the comment on depression with a pinch of salt, bearing in mind when obviously the quote came from. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. Again, I thought it was very much about, being in the present and the benefit that you will derive from practicing and trying to do that. I realize that's a lot easier said than done, but just to get a sort of context on where the thinking around happiness comes from. Confucius, he believed happiness is self-fulfilling prophecy, so replicates itself the more and more we find reasons for existence. There's also kind of, I guess, that feeds into having a positive outlook, trying to see the best out situations where possible. This gentleman, John Locke, who you probably know as the father of liberalism, but he was attributed with the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is from, of course, the United States Declaration of Independence. I think that this brings up quite an interesting conversation around the interpretation of the declaration, which is a much broader subject, obviously. But I think happiness in this sense perhaps might be translated by many as wealth. And we again know from psychology, from experiences, that wealth doesn't necessarily bring us true happiness. Finally, I'm just going to introduce you to Abraham Maslow, who again many of you will probably know. He's recognised as a modern psychologist whose work was concerned with psychological health. I wasn't actually planning to put Maslow in the presentation originally, but because I decided to introduce him as one of the great thinkers, I thought it would be really useful to reference his work, which is the hierarchy of needs. So again, I'm sure this is familiar to a lot of you. So whilst parts of it are not necessarily supported, I guess, by a lot of modern psychologists or modern theorists, it is an incredible, valuable tool, and it's still cited today. So the idea is that each category needs to be sufficiently satisfied to address the next category. So you start from the bottom with your physiological and you move up the hierarchy. So the pinnacle is self-actualization, which refers to fulfillment. I think this is obviously a really, really critical topic when we start thinking about happiness at work. Where do we derive our fulfillment from? You know, nowadays we do want work to be able to support and nurture that. Now, introducing another really important theory. This is around flow. And this is kind of the crux, or one of the kind of key factors within positive psychology. I cannot for the life of me pronounce the name of the psychologist who came up with this theory, so I'm not going to even attempt to, but at the end there's I'm going to just give you a little list of some really great books that you can reference, and you'll see his name there and understand why I can't pronounce it, so apologies. I've lightly introduced the concept and referred to flow. Previously mentioned it in my kind of own life, and you know how I kind of tap into happiness. But an expansion on this is that we need to move beyond the mundane. So we need to move beyond the inauthentic and sort of purely pleasure-driven pursuits. We need to introduce meaning to our lives. And I think when we talk about that, sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, like, oh God, what is the meaning of my life? But it's going to mean very, very different things to different people. For some, it's raising a stable family. For others, it's going to be career progression. For some, it's going to be making sure that I've got a really brilliant work-life balance. It's just, you know, it doesn't matter, and there is no one right answer. But finding that and tapping into that is an incredibly useful moment of enlightenment, I suppose. And then in terms of flow, I suppose thinking of, just to give some tangible examples on that, when are you in flow? I mean, again, very personal, but it's perhaps when you're running, it's when you're dancing, it's when you're writing, or, you know, it's when you are literally immersed, you are present, you are in that moment. It's just, yeah, I get quite excited talking about it, actually. I think I was in the flow there. So another theory that I wanted to introduce to you was around defining your virtues. So this is really useful in helping you to develop your strengths. These broad virtues that I've outlined here, these are again from one of Seligman's studies, and he did a cross-cultural study that wanted to see what mattered to people, regardless of where they lived, what their status was, what their religious or spiritual beliefs were. And him and his partner came to these 7 virtues. That these were universal across the globe. So basically, by having this classification, we could then start to measure the effectiveness of positive psychology. there's a lot more reading you can do on this. There's a whole book on that, when you can start to delve into the virtues and what they mean. And I think there'll be a lot of familiar concepts to you, and there'll be stuff that will definitely resonate. So, check on my time. So this is a final concept that I thought would be quite nice to introduce. And it's obviously from psychology. And I think it's got huge relevance in today's climate, given what we've experienced in the last year, what we're still living through, and in relation to work as well. So I think I'm going to just play a short video, and it will explain in a lot better detail the theory. Hopefully this works.
This is a story of human motivation. Humans are motivated equally in two directions.
Casey, so I'm just going to jump in here. It would seem that we can't hear the video.
This is
If I can get back into my presentation now.
this one's actually 7 years old. I have it.
Hi, Casey. We can see your presentation.
Can you? Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
we couldn't hear your video, unfortunately, and I was.
Oh, you didn't hear any of it? Oh.
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I think you couldn't hear me because you had the video in the background. So apologies, everyone that was listening to that. But we can.
Okay. That was probably a bit boring. What I'm struggling with now is
we can see your we can see your screen. So if you want to go to your, you are sharing screen.
Can you just see the front of the first page, or?
I can see the full presentation, so you just need to do it in view. So
I guess what I'm asking is, I might have to stop sharing and do it again, if you don't mind, because I think what I'm seeing is different. It won't allow me to go back, so bear with me.
No worries.
Okay, we're back on the page now. Yeah,
Perfect.
Oh, I'm so sorry about the video. It's a really good video. I wouldn't have picked it otherwise, but obviously I can share it afterwards if anyone wants to check it out. So apologies. So this kind of brings us on, I guess, to well-being in a much more familiar context. You know, we know that well-being needs to become a daily part of our lives. You know, it needs to be just woven in a way that makes it easy. And I suppose the text, the quote here said, it cannot just exist in your own head. We need to feel good as well as actually have meaning, good relationships and accomplishments. It's the kind of whole holistic view of well-being. And I think now more than ever, a wider audience are kind of more receptive and have a better understanding of that concept. I think that a lot more workplaces, institutions, that even with politics, I suppose, there is a kind of greater acceptance that that does need to kind of play into every facet of our life. So, you know, as individuals and kind of the support structures around us need to be there to protect and nurture our well-being as an ongoing concern. I think this is a really minor interesting fact that I read the other day, was that lockdown had prompted a 500% increase in houseplant sales. Just a silly little fact that I read that kind of stuck. But I think this is kind of interesting. It's simple changes to the public's spending habits, which are going to positively influence their lives. We know that having plants around you is good for you. So I just thought it's just those, that even that as a small nugget, we're seeing the steps people are beginning to make. And ultimately it kind of talks about habits, that to form new positive habits that are going to have an impact on your life, it takes time. Like it does if you decided you wanted to learn the piano, you need to commit to it, you need to keep practicing in order to, I guess, truly reap the rewards. So, next slide. So, right here, happiness. All of these broad subjects require a degree of commitment. So whether it's rest or nourishment, movement, relationships, we know that kind of all of these are going to feed into the melting pot of supporting our well-being. And yeah, we need to commit to them. Perhaps we're going to commit to some above others. And it's probably highly likely that we're already committed to some of them. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit in that sphere for the kind of ongoing positive work that we're already doing to support our well-being. Be that signing up to run a marathon or partaking in dry January or veganuary, whatever it might be. These are all kind of small steps. Right, so For the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to guide you through a couple of 2 or 3, depending on time, simple practices that might start to inspire some positive change in yourself. So people can often feel the benefits of these kind of little tasks instantly. They might come away going, oh, I've got some clarity, I've got some enlightenment, or I've thought about something in a different way. Or it might be that actually you do need to adopt these as regular habits, and you're going to then start to sort of, they'll become ingrained in your kind of daily life, and you'll really start to see the rewards. So what would be great is if you can, I guess, take a deep breath and get relaxed. I won't do a kind of little meditation or anything, because I know there's been other experts doing stuff like that. But get your pen and paper out. It's quite nice to have kind of some big bits of paper so you don't kind of run out of pages. And what I'm going to do is read some prompts to you, and basically you just need to respond to those prompts as I'm reading them. It's good not to overthink it, just to let the ideas flow. Don't kind of worry. No one's going to see what you've written, for example. Now, this first task is called 10 Tiny Changes, and it comes from a brilliant book called The Artist's Way, which again I've referenced at the end of the presentation. It's quite an intense book, and for a lot of people it's a little bit too spiritual. But actually, if you kind of cut through all that, if that's kind of not quite to your taste, there's some really insightful guidance there. It's a 12-week course. So yeah, if you've got the time or inclination, I would check that out. So I'm being a bit naughty by lifting one of the tasks out of it, because you are supposed to do the whole course, but we've only got 45 minutes. So you get your pen and paper ready, and I am going to give you the prompts. I would like to, you complete from there. I would like to. 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 I would really like to. Okay, so hopefully you probably guessed where it was heading halfway through, but hopefully now you've got a list of 10 things that you were instinctively telling yourself you would like to. And some of those might be major changes, but I imagine there might be some small changes within that list. So what I would invite you to do next is just to look at your list and choose one of the smallest I would like to's that you've written down, and make a personal commitment to trying to achieve that within the next week or the next month. So again, not sharing that with anyone, but just a personal commitment. Okay, so practice 2. I would just say with all these practices, these are obviously things that you can really start to introduce weekly or daily into your life, and you will be surprised at how your responses shift and you grow, develop, etc. over time. Okay, so this next practice is a little bit more challenging. This is it's a cognitive behavioral model, and it's designed to introduce flexible thinking. So there's the analogy that we have flexible necks that allow us to view the world from different angles. And flexible thinking is the ability to have similar maneuverability in our thinking perspective. I think sometimes we can become very wedded to beliefs. This, is universal and it is human nature. But it's just, trying to kind of use a tool that will allow us to think broader, to consider other possibilities. So it's and as a result, that's really helpful to develop a positive mindset. So it doesn't mean utopian, it doesn't mean uninformed, but it can enable us to think clearer. It can help us to worry less about decisions. It allows us to be more decisive, so we're having more time back. Our brain isn't so foggy and cluttered. And it can allow us to be, once we've made those decisions, to actually be content with them. So what we're going to do, it's called the ABC thinking check. And it's about generating a range of perspectives that over time help you to develop more positive consequences. So A stands for adversity, B is for belief, and C is for consequences. What I would like you to do, I'm going to give you prompts again, and we're going to outline an adversity that you have got in your life. Again, it can be big or small, it doesn't matter. Don't feel that anything's too small. Then we're going to write down some beliefs. And as we move through the beliefs, it would be really great if we could sort of pause and tune into alternative responses. So your first belief and your first consequence of belief might be quite automatic, oh, someone at work ignored me. My automatic response is they hate me. When actually we're going to try and think, well, actually it might be that they're just having an off day. So I really hope that makes sense. Again, if you can get your pen and paper ready. So the first thing we're going to outline is the adversity that I face. So if you can think of something that is a bit of a challenge at the moment, or an experience you've had. Okay, and then now I'm going to ask you to complete the sentence. Belief 1 is. Belief 2 is. Belief 3 is. Okay, and now we're going to, with our little list of belief 1, 2, 3, we're going to consider the consequences of each of those. So the consequence of belief 1 are, consequences of belief 1 are. Consequences of belief 2 are. And consequences of belief 3 are. Okay, I know that can be a bit challenging the first time you do it. So I guess, as I expressed at the beginning, it really is about habits. But it is just a really useful tool. And I think another useful tool is just taking pause and not allowing our kind of first instinctive reaction to then almost dictate how everything's going to progress. And it's quite interesting when you start to think about, as I was saying, the example, my colleague at work ignored me. My first instinct is they hate me. My second instinct is they know something I don't. My third is that they're actually just having an off day. And it's so interesting how extreme those beliefs are and what they can kind of stir in ourselves. So yeah, hope that was useful. So we have definitely got time for a third practice, and this is a really nice one, and it does take a little bit longer. So it's about the practice of journaling, and I'm sure a lot of you do this anyway, but I've called it Sunday because I think Sunday's quite a nice day, but it could be on a Monday or whatever. But if you could commit to working through these journal prompts once a week, they're almost clearing your mind. They're setting you up for the week ahead. What do I want to achieve? What do I need to help me achieve that, etc. And also, I know we're all different in terms of when we like to work, but there is something really useful and positive about doing stuff in the morning. Kind of just your mind is a little bit clearer, hasn't been influenced by the day's events. So yeah, I'd always recommend doing something like this in the morning. Sunday or Monday morning would be great. Right, if you are ready, I'm going to go through the next set of prompts. Number one, how are you feeling today? What or who or where are you missing today? What practices or traditions could you turn to for comfort? What is it that you need today or this week? How can you personally support yourself in this moment? What boundaries do you have or do you need to communicate? What makes you feel at ease and joyous? What are you grateful for? What are you proud to have accomplished already this last week? And finally, what does the next week loosely look like? Okay. Hopefully that's given you enough time to answer the questions. And I'm really hoping that for all of you, obviously, but at least some of you, that you've kind of feel a bit lighter about the week ahead, and feel like, oh, I've got a bit of clarity on what I'm doing, where I'm going, and found that to be a really useful exercise. It's something that quite often when I run through it with people in a group, I'll do myself. And I'm always surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm just doing it now, even though I'm giving the prompts of kind of what I uncover and how I feel afterwards. I definitely feel lighter. It will be interesting to know how you guys feel. So we are quite ahead of schedule. This was a kind of, as I've referenced before, just some of the references. I thought if anyone wanted to obviously take a photo or whatever, kind of some really good, useful places to start exploring the concepts of happiness and positive psychology and flow. I've also referenced the artist's way there, which, as I say, it's not for everyone, but I definitely think it's worth checking out. It's designed to unlock latent creativity, so it could be used by perhaps artists moving discipline, or people that have kind of wanted to explore their artistry and haven't had a chance. But there are a plethora of books out there. I'm sure you know that. But I think starting your journey with some really respected psychologists is going to be a good foundation, because happiness is such a broad subject, and the story can be told in so many different ways. And that brings me on to my closing slide, where I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I hope you found the session useful. I am on LinkedIn, obviously, and I've put my work email there, which I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out on LinkedIn or via email if you've got any questions, or would like me to sort of point you in the direction of any courses or books or whatever it might be. Yeah, feel free. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was really good. Sorry about the video again, everyone, but yeah, if you want anything, if you want us to send that to you, obviously just drop a note in the questions column, and we'll get in contact with you. But I think that was really insightful. And in your last the last one, I put the same thing 3 times, which is friends. So I'm obviously I'm obviously missing them, and they make me feel good. So it's reminded me that I need to speak to some friends tonight. Absolutely, they are the things I miss and the things I'm most grateful for. Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody. Our next session is at 2 o'clock, which is a Q&A with event grads, which should be really interesting. But thank you again, Casey, and we will hopefully see you again soon.